My dear children, I will discuss about psychology and other disciplines and other also psychology in everyday life. Now, other disciplines mean philosophy, medical science, political science, computer science, economics. That means the relationship between psychology and other disciplines. And our behavior is determined by various kinds of factors. Our biological part is also important. Our socio-cultural context is also important. Yes, and psychology shares its knowledge with anthropology, sociology, political science, economics. Yes, and the other also in studying mental activities involved in creation of various kinds of music, fine arts, drama. Yes. So now start psychology and other disciplines. You already know, children, the importance of philosophy in psychology. And philosophy, is one of the important root of psychology. And despite the emergence of psychology as a science, it greatly draws from philosophy, particularly with respect to methods of knowing and various domains of human nature and human behavior. Now next, medicine. Yes, the medical science. And what is the meaning of health? And health means, our physical well-being as well as our psychological, our social and spiritual well-being also. Not only physical part, the psychological part is also important for our life, for our well-being. And nowadays, a large number of hospitals now employ psychologists. Yes, and doctors also have realized the importance of psychological aspects of patients. Yes, and various kinds of illnesses like AIDS and physically challenged and other patients in the intensive care unit, the patients during post-operative care, doctors have also felt the need for psychological counseling. The counseling is important. Yes, for prolonged pain and for cancer patient, AIDS patient, and one of the important branch, the health psychology is deals with in that particular problems. Yes. And the other important part, the psycho-oncology, that means the psychological aspects of cancer patient. Yes, the important thing is that doctors have also felt the need for psychological counseling. Yes. And the other important part, we have to increase the awareness about psychological counseling. Yes. Now next, economics and political science. And for our buying behavior and as a consumer, yes, and our thinking, our interest, our likes, our needs, our perceptions, all are important. Yes, so a micro level economic behavior, and particularly in understanding consumer behavior, savings behavior, and in decision making also. Yes. And now, next other important thing is that political science and the relationship between psychology and political science also. Yes, and the leadership and what are the important characteristics of leader. Yes, and various kinds of propaganda and the uses of media. Yes, the political science to draws considerably from psychology and particularly in understanding issues related to exercise of power, authority and nature of political conflicts and their resolution, and the very important part, the voting behavior. Yes, so there is a relationship between political science and psychology. And now, next, sociology. What is sociology? What is the meaning of sociology? And now, sociology is the study of social life, social change, and the social causes and consequences of human behavior. Yes. And sociologists, investigate the structure of groups, what are the importance of group, and how people interact. And that means the communication is also important part. Yes. And sociology and psychology, and especially, social psychology, yes, come together to explain and understand the behavior of individuals within different socio-cultural context and issues related to socialization. What is the meaning of socialization? So how we know, and various rules, regulation of our society. What are the importance of group? What are the different types of group? Yes, collective behavior and intergroup conflicts gain from both these disciplines. And now next, importance of computer science. Yes, you already know the computer science is borrowed from psychology, and the concept of computer and just was borrowed from, the structure of our mind, the functions of our mind. Yes, from the very beginning, the effort of computer science has been, it's mimicking the human mind. Yes. So, and one can see it in terms of how a computer is structured, its memory organized, sequential and simultaneous processing of information. That means the information processing system. And I already told, the information processing systems and the relationship between the human mind and computer. And other important discipline, law and criminology. A skilled lawyer and the criminologist, requires the knowledge of psychology in answering such questions. As a lawyer, as a criminologist, and just know the human mind very well. Yes. And such question, how well a witness remembers an accident? Yes. And how well can she report such facts when taking the witness stand in the court? And what factors influence the decision which is taken by the court? Yes. And these kinds of, the issues and answer to which would help the legal system of the country in the future. And now next, mass communication. Yes, the print and the electronic media, have entered in our lives in a very big way. Yes, and they have a major influence on our thinking, our attitude, our emotions, and they provide knowledge also. Yes. And the impact of media on the formation of attitudes of children and their behavior, yes, is a domain where both these disciplines come together. And psychology also helps in developing strategies for better and effective communication. Yes, a journalist in reporting news must know the reader's interest in the story. And just you see the West Bengal media, yes, and their news. Yes, and since most stories deal with human events, knowledge of their motives, their interests, their emotions is very important. Yes, now next, music and fine arts is important nowadays, and for therapy also. Yes, and music therapy. And we already know the importance of music in our life. Yes, and music and emotion is another area in which a number of studies have been carried out. Yes, and music therapy can be an active process, is very popular also, where clients play a role in creating music. Yes, and the important thing is that this form of treatment may be helpful for people with depression, anxiety, and it may help improve the quality of life. Yes, for people with physical health problems, the music therapy is also important for nowadays. And now next, the fine arts, music and fine arts, that means the art therapy, can be used to treat a wide range of mental disorders and psychological distress also. Yes. And you know the areas, anxiety, depression, emotional difficulties, eating disorder, we can use art therapy. And now next, architecture and engineering. Yes. And ask any architect. And she must satisfy, her clients by providing mental and physical space through her design and satisfy aesthetically. Yes. That means other important part, and the cognitive ergonomics also. Yes. The important part, the human satisfaction and needs. Yes. And engineers must also take into account human habits in their plans for safety on streets and highways. Yes. And as our signaling process, is a red color, yellow and green color. What are the significance of these colors? Yes. And psychological knowledge helps in a big way in designing of all mechanical devices and display. Yes. And now, psychology in everyday life. You already know, children, the importance of psychology in our life. And everywhere, in psychology. Yes. We can use various principles and methods of psychology in our day-to-day life. We can improve our quality of life. Yes. We can reduce various kinds of conflicts in our life. Yes, from psychology we know various new information. We can use in our day-to-day life also. Yes. And various kinds of branches, from various kinds of branches, we know the importance and application of psychology in our day-to-day life. And and various kinds of problem, day-to-day problem, we can solve. Yes, we can maintain our quality of life. And knowledge of psychology is also personally relevant. Yes. And many of the human life problems are psychologically originated. Yes. Depression, anxiety, various kinds of negative attitude. So how can we solve these kinds of problems? Yes. And how can we improve our positive attitude, our self-confidence, self-esteem? How we know about yourself? That means the self-concept is important. Yes. And for our life, motivation is also important. How we express our emotion. How can we manage our emotion? That means the emotional intelligence is also important for our life. Yes. How can we reduce examination anxiety is very common among children. Yes. And various kinds of problems in our day-to-day life we can solve. We can use psychological principles. How can we resolve stress? What are the various kinds of stress coping strategies? Stress management technique. The importance of relaxation. How can we change our thinking pattern? How can we change our perception? Yes. And the importance of psychology. We can use psychological principles, psychological knowledge And children, you have to know the importance of psychology in our day-to-day life. Yes. Thank you, my dear children.